Hey y'all. Let me see. Still getting feedback. One moment. Hold on, one y'all. Hold on one moment, y'all. I'm getting feedback. So I'm gonna go off camera for just a moment. One moment. Okay, all right, I'm back. Are y'all getting feedback on your end? If somebody can give me a yes or a no. No. Okay, perfect. All right, happy Tuesday. It is early in the morning. If everybody can please comment your name if your device does not have, if your Zoom is not set up with your name, therefore I can take attendance. So I have to mark who's actually here. Hey Noah, hey y'all. So we have a very special guest joining us today, which I'm super excited because I don't have to teach. Yay. She is actually going to be talking about contract review. And as a business, absolutely every business is going to review some type of contract. I just went through some major contracts and absolutely needed an attorney to review them, because not just one attorney, I had two attorneys review them because the contracts were so messed up. They were not in my favor. And so by the time we got done, absolutely everything was in, not everything, but the things that I needed in my favor was in my favor. So welcome to our training, our free training with SCORE. I am Latasha Brooks. I am the workshop coordinator. I coordinate all of the workshops for my chapter. And so I'm super excited to have a special guest come on and help us out. SCORE offers free training. And now because of COVID, you guys can literally get training from SCORE all across the world. So you have no excuse not to pour into these resources or not to utilize your resources and take full advantage of these opportunities, because it's expensive to get an attorney. It's expensive to get this knowledge, and you guys are getting it for free on behalf of SCORE. Be sure to do our survey at the end. We love to know what you guys think about the trainings. And without further ado, I'm going to take attendance real quick. And I am going to let Lauren hop on. I do see that she's here. And so we will go ahead and get it started. She is going to have a Q&A at the end. And so again, like iPhone, okay, one iPhone did post. Okay, H, whoever name is H, I'm not sure what your actual name is. If you can please comment your name. And I think that is it for the people that I can't tell. Fireflies, note taker. Oh, that's Billy. Okay. And then H. H is the only person that I'm not quite sure who that is. So if you can comment your name. Other than that, I am going to let Lauren do her thing.
Hi, everybody. Don't worry, I'm coming on screen here. All right. Hi. How's everybody doing? It's so great to see so many familiar faces. Thanks for supporting, you guys. And I'm excited to talk about contracts today because contracts comes up so much in business. It's a necessity. It's a part of working and doing business. And hold on one second. I think we need to, are we supposed to be recording?
It's recording.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Just wanted to make sure. So yes, so for those who do not know me, my name is Lauren Morgan. I am a business attorney and I specialize in contract law, trademarks, and entity setup, as well as employment law. I dabble in that as well. But today we are going to be talking about contracts and some useful tips that you can use in navigating contracts within your business. But also I'm going to highlight on, for those of you who might be in government contracts, I'm going to highlight some of the things you want to be mindful of when going into a contract with the government. So without further ado, I'm gonna get started, but I do want to say one quick thing. So I hate talking to people with presentations, right? I am here to serve you guys. I'm here to help you guys. And in order to do that, I need y'all to engage with me a little bit. Don't worry, nobody has to come off camera. Nobody has to come off the mic and talk if you don't want to, but I might ask you guys some questions. Please feel free to drop it into the comment box here and give some feedback there, because I want to make sure that we are able to, make sure you get the maximum out of this event today. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and we are going to get started. All right. So as I already mentioned, today we are here, mastering contract review is our topic for today and what we're going to go over. And the first thing I kind of want to share and talk about is what a contract is. And so a contract is a verbal or written agreement between two or more parties. And the intent is to really bind the parties to a mutual agreement. And it's important for you to have this in writing because perspectives can be different. And when we all know that I can say something, I can give you a clause or a term, and it means something completely different. This is really important when you come from different culture backgrounds, right? When we are dealing with people who were just raised in a different perspective. But every single day, miscommunication is one of the just unfortunate things that we all have to deal with in life, and it's happening all the time. And so that's one of the things that we want to be mindful of when we are entering a contract, and that's why they are so important. The contract captures what the parties actually intend to do within the business, not, when you are 2 months into the contract and you realize it's not being fulfilled the way I thought it was going to be. That's a problem, because when you go back to the person, they're like, oh no, I didn't mean that. I didn't say that. But you didn't really clearly state that in the contract. So that's the importance of having the right contracts in place and having them clearly stated. And what we're going to kind of talk about today is a good way of how to navigate that and making sure it's happening in your business. Okay. So how many of you guys have contracts in your business already working for you? And yes, you are utilizing them every day? I'm gonna pop off from sharing my screen because I can't see when you guys see that. If you are using it, go ahead and put a 1 in the chat for me. Awesome. Y'all there? Y'all just waiting on me to give you some. Okay, awesome. I love this. And don't worry, if you are not using contracts in your business today, after today, you will feel much more equipped to make sure you are using contracts in your business. Awesome, awesome. I love to see it. All right. So in navigating contracts, there are several contracts, many different types, but there are several contracts that I recommend all business owners need to have in place from the beginning, right? The one of which is going to be website terms and privacy policies. This is important because we are no longer in the day and age where businesses are just brick and mortar. Businesses are expanding all around the world. You have no idea where your business is going to touch. If it is on the internet, it is fair game, and it can literally be in any country, any continent, at any time. And that means that you have to have the terms of service and privacy policies in place that are going to be compliant with the different type of laws that are in place for this. So we have federal law, we have international law, the GDPR bill, you have state law, you have local law, you have municipal law, you have county laws, right? All of these may have different requirements in which you need to be compliant for. And it really can become that nitpicky, especially with how data is being regulated, right? There is a federal law for it, but then states can opt to have stricter requirements. All of us have seen this in play. If you guys have ever been on a website or ever been somewhere and you have seen someone, when you're reading it, it says, if you're a resident in California, or if you're a resident in Wyoming or Oregon, if you've seen that in any contract or are you reviewing something, go ahead and put a 2 in the chat for me and let me know this is something that you are, you've encountered in doing business. So a lot of times we're coming across contract law and we don't even know we're coming across it, right? It's things that are happening and we get used to seeing it, but we don't recognize how important this is for us to have in place in maintaining our businesses and contracts. So see, y'all been seeing this because it's happening every single day. It's something that's going on in the world and we're seeing happen because this is relevant to that. So love to see it. The next thing is ICs, right? As small business owners, a very important part of making sure our business is running is delegation. We can't do it all, unfortunately. If we want to, we could try to, but burnout is real, right? So a healthy practice and boundary for a business owner to have in place is delegation. And to do this, that means you need to hire people. And I always recommend when you are hiring, even if you end up employing them full-time, always start off with contractors, right? These are people who have their own businesses, who are experts in their respective fields, and they come alongside your business and provide a service in that respective field of expertise, and they aid your business in building, right? Independent contractors can be for marketing, independent contractors can be for social media, they can be for assistants, and virtual assistants is a really big one, but also technically, I am an independent contractor for my clients, technically, right? At the end of the year, I send my clients a not a 1099, a W-9 for their fees in which they have paid me. So technically your attorneys are partners of your business. They come alongside and they are providing a W-9, which is what independent contractors provide you at the end of the year for reporting the write-off, right? This is how I'm a write-off expense for your business because I am seen as an IC. I got a question in real quick. Let me just make sure. This is a great question and it's relevant to the website terms and policies. So like I said, engage you guys. You don't have to wait to the end to ask questions because I want to make sure you're getting the most out of it. So I'm gonna go ahead and answer this because it was relevant to that. It says, I have a travel agency service-based and it is a very basic information of website, not transactional. Do I still need a website policy? I love this question. Yes, I'll tell you why. Even though it's service-based, a lot of service-based, how things work in your business are essentially going to be outlined in your terms of services, especially as a travel agent. A lot of times what happens, unless people are doing, travel agents can offer services a little bit different, but even though it's service-based, you kind of can offer them similarly to a project, right? So if you were not doing a specific group trip for someone individually, but you were just having an open sale for a cruise offer and anyone who wanted to come and sign up for that can come and sign up. You would just submit a form on the website, people can come and submit the deposit and they are good to go. Your terms of service policy is actually going to be your contract for the deal. You're going to put in the details, right? And on the next slide, we're going to get into some clauses, but I'm going to highlight a couple now because this is why it's relevant. In your terms of services, you want to be specific about, is that deposit refundable, right? You are going to go into the specifics of the transaction. And that's why when people go and they check out, it's a little box they click that you've read and you agree to the terms of services. So if there's any issues, your terms of services is going to be the point of reference for guidance on what was supposed to happen in that transaction, right? Privacy policies is a little bit different. It's what you do with the data. That is what's federally, state, and mandated, but the terms of service is there to serve you. So I highly recommend, especially in a service-based business, where it's not one-off like this. If you're doing a group trip and it's for one person, like they're getting married and they want their family to go, that's a little bit different. I would have a custom contract with them that specifies the terms but how you are going to offer businesses or the terms of business at large is what you detail out in your terms of service, right? For instance, if you have a consultation link on your website, right, and it's non-refundable, I'm going to highlight that when people are booking my console, but I also can put that in my terms of service as well. If you have cancellation policies, you can highlight this in your terms of service and policies as well. So all of this is very important information, and it's really good to put in your terms of service. It's like a general catch-all for how your business runs and what your policies are that affect all people and everyone. However, specific contracts are going to be needed on the one-off cases when you're working directly with clients, and more specific terms are going to apply. Very, very great question. I hope that explained that for you. All right. So I pretty much have wrapped up what an IC agreement is, but essentially it's going to be the agreement that you have with your independent contractor for the services they are offering you. So to talk about how you pay them, what the scope of work is going to be for that contract. And it's very important that we capture this because these are important relationships that maintain and run over with your business. All right. So a service agreement. So this is actually the specific contract that I just kind of brought up in that example that I was answering for the question. A service agreement is something that you want to have in place when you are providing services to individuals. You want to be really specific here. This is something that we want to make sure that we are detailing out and that we have in place that outlines the scope of work, the deadlines, the fees that are being paid, if there are going to be any late fees, any interest, et cetera, et cetera. This is going to be vital to how you are running your business. And so this is where we want to be really, really clear. What is expected of the client to provide these services and what services you are providing, right? Because down the line, if someone says, well, I didn't get this, I didn't get that, we can always reference the service agreement, because the service agreement is where this should be captured and where it should be detailed out, explaining exactly the expectations all parties should be receiving in this, okay? I'm going to hop back to website terms of services. I cannot stress why this is so important, you guys, because it's even more important if you have a product-based business, right? If you go to Fashion Nova, if you go to Nordstrom's, if you go to, I'm trying to think of an international business, Louis Vuitton, their websites, right? When you go to check out, they're not having you sign an agreement, but you are purchasing something from them. And they might highlight some of the things, right? They might say, this is not refundable. I know that's Fashion Nova's policy, right? Our purchases are non-refundable. You get a store credit, right? They highlight that. But because they are product-based and it's very general terms and policies that apply to everyone, in their terms of services, if you ever go and read it, it breaks down the specifics more in-depthly, right? It tells you how you have to go about processing the exchange and the credit for services. It talks about the timeline in which you have to actually use that credit, et cetera, right? So for product-based websites, terms of services are just as important for service-based websites. But for products, this is your service agreement, right? So your terms of service and your privacy policy is going to be so important here, because we want to make sure that we are talking about how the refund is going to happen, how an exchange is going to happen, how if you are using our website, you consent to getting, you sign up for our email list. Sometimes that's in the terms of service, and you're signing these little check boxes there. They're pulling out the most important agreements. They want to really make sure you recognize these and that these are highlighted, but there are so many more details as to how you implement that. How many of you guys have ever had a situation where you use these services, and you saw, okay, no refund provided, but you thought you were going to get a credit, but maybe there was a processing fee that they took out of the credit that you received. So what you paid, you actually didn't get that full amount back. You only got part of that back. Drop a 3 in the chat if you've ever had any experience with that. It could have been a hotel, could have been with a product-based business. But when you go and you have this conversation with them, they alert you that it's actually detailed out in their terms of service policies that you clicked off saying that you read, et cetera, et cetera. It happens all the time. And this is why it's so important for your business, right? Because you want to detail out the nitpicky things, the timeframes of which things are happening. It's really governing and protecting how you run your business. As a business owner, life happens and things are going to be in place, for instance, right? So when you do that, you are the only person who can regulate that. The customer is not aware of that. They don't think of those things, right? But you need to put your terms of service policies in place that govern what you need to protect your business in the day-to-day life of doing business, right? If you are processing refunds, how long is that going to take? You want to detail that out in there, right? Anything for your flow of a business, your operations, your systems, really, you put that into your terms of service and make sure you don't tell them what your systems and processes are per se, right? Like everything you're going to be doing, you just tell them the time frame and let them know and what put them into the agreement so people are aware of it, right? So I belabor in this point a lot, but it is really important and I cannot stress it. So many people don't have terms of service and privacy policies on their website. So this is a really big important one. And while we're at it, your business changes all the time. Regular contracts, I would say annually check up on them, but the terms of services, because you might have an experience with a customer and you need to update something. Make sure you are updating your terms of service policy. That needs to be more frequently, at least quarterly, because these are going to be very important for how we're governing our business, okay? For a confidentiality and non-disclosure agreement, they are very important because we want to protect the conversations and the trade secrets that we are having and discussing with people. This is very important for those people who are coming to support you in building your team. So pretty much any piece of the pie that is working with you and touching your business, people need to sign a non-disclosure agreement. And this also, the most common question I get with non-disclosure agreements is how soon do I need to sign it? Before you start having conversations with people, right? So when you're doing interviews and you're making sure it's an independent contractor, you're not really disclosing the systems and processes of your business at that time. You're giving them an overview, right? You want to make sure it's a good fit. You tell them what you do, you see what they do, check their work, et cetera. When you hire them and they're going to start learning and understanding your business more specifically of what the ins and outs are, what you are doing, you need to have them sign an NDA. Another common example of when an NDA should be signed is with investors. When investors are coming into your business and you are having them work with you and you are having them, get a percentage of your company, et cetera, they are learning all about your company. When should they be signing an NDA? At the beginning of that conversation, because to entice them to invest in your business, we have to disclose a lot of information about the business that they might be better positioned to actually run off and put in place now that they understand how it works without having an NDA in place, right? So NDAs are vital to protecting small business owners because we need to make sure that our business ideas, our structures, things like that are really in place. So with that being said, I just want to go through the comments, make sure I didn't get miss any comments. So. Okay, so basically in the case where services are not issued or in your control, how do you safeguard that? So that's actually a really great point. That's not something that comes up a lot in day-to-day contracts with people. However, that would be a third-party contract clause that you would want to insert in, right? You would want to disclose that any service is not being provided by your company and hosted by you, that you will actually not be liable to them, that they should go see this. So you actually do see these in website terms of service and privacy policies sometimes where they will disclose this is our website terms and policy, but we are using Google hosting, et cetera, or GoDaddy hosting, and then they will link it, even Wix hosting sometimes. If they're using different softwares and different platforms to provide services on their website that they have no control over, it's appropriate to say we are not responsible for that. And if you would like to review their service policies, et cetera, link them and then put it on. To that point, it is not efficient to just say, oh, my website is built on Wix, and people go pull Wix's terms of service in their privacy policy. Wix, you are not running a website hosting database and a website build out. Your business is not Wix business, and your terms of services are not going to be appropriate because they do not fit your actual business. So great question with that as well. Hopping into operating agreements and bylaws. A lot of states require these. It's not required in all states though, but an operating agreement is going to be if you have an LLC. Bylaws are going to be if you have a corporation. For an operating agreement, you want to make sure that you detail out how your business is operating. When we set up a new entity, LLC or corporation, the LLC in the corporation become its own person, right? Even though you set it up, you own it, it operates completely separate from you, which is why it has its own social security number, the EIN, and why it has its own bank account, right? And it's very important that you keep those separate so that you don't pierce the corporate veil and become responsible for things that the business was supposed to be shielding you from, right? So in doing that, these agreements detail out the roles in which people who own it or are operating or members of are going to be fulfilling their roles and responsibilities within the business. And when different business situations come up and arise, this is going to detail out what you are doing with that. How do we vote members in? How do we get money to our members? How do we pay our members if that's something that happens? How do we dissolve the business if that were to come up? How do we resolve issues within the business? So you are being forward thinking about issues that might arise and having a plan in place to be able to move and execute should that situation come up with your business, right? Let's see. If you have an LLC that is taxed taxed as an S corp, do you still need bylaws on operating or both? So that's a great question. You are going to need operating agreement. The type of agreement you need is based off of the entity set up. Taxation is a separate issue that is not related to the operating agreement, although you might disclose it in the operating agreement, right? A part of that is going to say you're going to talk about your accounting and how that processing works. Do we do quarterly accounting? Do we do annual accounting? What system and type of accounting are we using? You will disclose that we are to be taxed as an S corp, is to be filed by this state. They can get very, very specific, but you need an operating agreement if you are set up with your state and recognized as an LLC, regardless of how you are taxed, and the same with a corporation. Corporations, which also include nonprofits, also have bylaws. So great clarifying question. Once again, to clarify with a third party, it's a third party clause that you would have within your terms of service, not a separate third party agreement. You can link their agreement separately. And I think, Monica, if you have additional questions, I would recommend, because you have very specific needs, I would recommend setting up a consult just so we can dive in specifically and deeper. Because within the scope of this course, I wouldn't be able to provide more information. And I think I need a little bit more information from you if I didn't answer your question already with that. But I hope that's helpful and clarifies for you. All right, you guys. So lastly is a non-compete agreement. And this is really important as well, because there is this beautiful illusion bubble, I like to call it. When people are employees, right, they get the benefit of working hard for someone, they show up to work and they do their job, and they have this perspective that can come up sometimes that they can do it better, right? Like, oh, well, our customers are complaining about this. I can do this, right? Not knowing and recognizing all the work that really goes into it sometimes, right? And so we have to protect our businesses in making sure that it's not that maybe you can do it better, right? Not a problem. However, a lot of how and why you can do it better, in perspective or not, if you know it, you learn from working with our job. And so it wouldn't be fair to just go set up shop across the street from me and basically poach our clients, poach our business idea, and rip off my business, basically, right? So we have to put a non-compete in place. And this isn't just for employees. This can be for your independent contractors, which are the same, but this can also be for business partners, should be for business partner, investors, anyone who is getting inside detail and intel into your business that we want to make sure doesn't have the opportunity to go in to reproduce it. Now, non-competes are limiting. They are not just final where they can't do your business on any level. Unless it is a specialty license. So for instance, you can limit it via timeframes. So you can say, oh, you can't compete with me for 3 years, 2 years, 5 years, 1 year. You can limit it to a radius. You can't compete with us within within the city, within a 5-mile radius, within a 10-mile radius. It really depends on the scope and type of business. However, what is going to be really, really important is that a non-compete that is overly burdening the person who you are trying to bar from stealing your ideas, if it is seen as an overly burden, it will not be enforceable. The court will say, no, it's unreasonable, right? Great example of this is that attorneys, right? We have a license. We have licenses depending on our scope of work in certain states, right? It would be unreasonable for a company to say, oh, you're licensed in this state and now you're not working for us, you cannot practice in this state. That is too overly burdensome. So the court would not enforce that. I do want to pause and see if there are any more questions on this slide. Once again, these are just the types of contracts I recommend all business owners. It does not matter where you are, from startup to established. All business owners really kind of need to have these agreements in place. These are basic agreements that I promise are the core of any and all businesses, of protecting you, having how you make money, how you get clients in the door, how your relationship is with them, and how your business is operating. These are the agreements that I recommend all businesses having at the start and just the foundation of the business. So any questions here before we hop into some specific clauses? Which I believe, Monica, I talk about the third-party clause on the next one too. It might be one. I just talk about the most common clauses on the next slide. So I know it takes a while for people to type out. So if a question comes up, I'm happy to hop back to it. But in the meanwhile, let's just hop into that one. Nope, I don't put it on there. But I'm going to move through these a little quickly just because I want to make sure I can save time for questions at the end. But essentially, an arbitration clause, you guys, small business cannot afford to not have an arbitration clause in place. It's so important because arbitration clauses allow you to be able to avoid litigation in court, right? So court is really expensive. Court is very timely, and court can take a very, it can just take, it can be all consuming. It is not it's very stressful, right? Arbitration is private. It is usually a lot cheaper, and litigation is not, it can remove some of the stress element from you, right? It still requires some of that because you have to prepare, things of that nature, but arbitration allows business owners to make mistakes. We're business owners. We're human. We're going to make mistakes in our business, but you don't want to make mistakes that are so costly when it really honestly was a mistake. And because it's litigation is dragging on for years and years and so on and so forth, right? It is literally handicapped your business, right? So we want to protect our business by having that arbitration clause. An entire agreement clause is really important. This is I call this a part of the boilerplate language that is and should be in every agreement, right? No matter what type of agreement it is. But essentially it states it's between parties, agreements that are between parties, because it says, we've gone back and forth negotiating this agreement. We've said some things, we've had ideas, but ultimately this agreement represents what we have finalized to be the final agreement and our final thoughts. The emails and all the back and forth negotiation that we went for are no longer a part of this final agreement. If it's not in this agreement, it's not a part of it, and that is that. That's important because people have referenced out and said, well, I thought that was a part of it because we said this on certain day in this email, and it didn't make it to the final agreement. But if you have this clause in there, it voids that out and it says, no, it wasn't in the final agreement. It wasn't supposed to be in there, right? So that's important because it can prevent a lot of the back and forth, he say, she say, of what is actually represented in the agreement. A payment terms clause is important because we need to know how we're getting paid, right? Who paying me? Where is money coming from? How are you paying me? What is going to be the time frame in which I get paid, et cetera, right? So the payment terms clause is going to detail this out. If there's a late payment, how do I, is there a fee for that? Is there going to be interest after a certain day? Do services stop after a certain time when I don't receive payment? This is very important, and this is why that's important, right? For a wrap-up clause, our wrap-up clause is basically, this is pivotal, like so important for service providers. If I provided service to you 3 months ago and I delivered my final draft and my final work to you, and I have not heard from you, you cannot come back in 6 months and be like, oh, by the way, that draft you sent me 6 months ago. I know we worked together for 3 months, it's over. Can you do a revision on it? Absolutely not. It bottlenecks your business. It is not fair to you and how you operate, and it's costing you money as a service provider. So a wrap-up clause says, within a certain time frame of delivering the final piece of work, you have there's a lot of time to make revisions, right? And of course, if there's additional revisions, you can change that. But at the end of that time frame, our work is concluded, right? If you got revisions, gave feedback or not, if you want to come back at a later time after that, it will be at an additional cost, right? So wrap-up clauses are very informative and they can help protect you in that way. So for a change in modification clauses, life be life and y'all, it be life. And so things are going to happen and come up, and we need to modify the agreement from time to time, right? So if you were supposed to provide a certain deadline and that deadline gets moved around and changes, that's okay. Both parties need to be in agreement with this, and you will modify that. Modification clauses limit how many times this can happen though, and it details out how we go about making those changes, right? So maybe we allow it to happen once, but it needs to be in writing. Both parties need to agree and sign off on it, and it becomes an addendum to the contract, right? That's what the clause would say. After that one time, either we're no longer allowing changes or it will be at an additional fee because it disrupts the flow of business and me providing the scope of work that I was supposed to provide for you, right? This is very imperative because people can change their mind. And sometimes, depending on where you are in the process, it's almost like just starting completely over and not getting paid for the original project, right? So we want to talk about that here and detail that out in this scope of work because that's important. Intellectual property. How many of y'all, I got to pause here and talk about it because I get so excited with intellectual property. How many of you guys have trademarks, copyrights, some patents that you're owning? Go ahead and drop a 3 in the chat for me if you have this. I think we already used 3, but it's cool. We have some comments in between. So I know it's more people up in here who got intellectual property. I know it. It's so many people in the call. There we go. I'm seeing some more. I'm like, I know. All right, you guys. This is near and dear to my heart because I told y'all what type of law I do in practice. Even though we're not talking about IP today, I practice that. And it is such a vital part of your business, not just to protect it, but to make sure that we are, eventually positioning our business to use it as an asset, right? So with that, Carla, it's okay. We're gonna work on it. We're gonna talk about it. So with your intellectual property, right? That's what I like to see. 3 in process, Renee. Yes. One of those I'm aware of, Renee. I love to see it. Yes. So when you have intellectual property, you need to have a clause in there who determines that who owns it, right? Especially when you're coming together and working with different collaborators. You want to make sure if we are creating something together, who is going to own what of that and how we can use that. But even in the midst of us creating this, you do not gain ownership or rights to my IP without an explicit statement of right and vice versa. So correcting our IP is not just once you register, it is an ongoing process, and our contracts can actually help us have this in place. We got a question around this. I want to answer this. It says, have you ever heard of anyone having 2 notices of acceptance withdrawn in a row? I'm not familiar with what you mean by this, Noah. Can you provide some more detail? So it depends on what type of application you did. If you did a 1A or a 1B for trademarking, and I'm assuming this is regarding trademarks, right? So if you could just clarify what your situation is, I might be able to provide a better detailed answer. But it depends. Was it the same mark? Was it 2 different marks? Yes, I have some questions to your question. So if you provide me some more detail, I'm happy to circle back to that later. So it was a patent disclosure. I don't do patent law. I do know that you can submit an initial application for patents. It's pending for a year, and then you have to go through and submit the full application. And I don't know how their acceptance and withdrawing part of it happens, but I do know the patent process is very rigorous, and it's very hard to get acceptance. If you are not using a patent attorney, Noah, I highly, highly recommend it. So basically that first year they give you as a tentative one. It does not mean you're going to get approved. It's just you are patenting your idea as you get it developed, as you work on it. And after that 1 year, it is very common for them, if it does not meet the requirements to move on, I do know that they will withdraw your application. If that's not where you are, I am unfortunately, like I said, that is outside of my scope of work. I would not be able to further answer that. I do trademarks and copyright specifically. Patent lawyers, fun fact, I'm a little bit about this, y'all, but patent attorneys actually have to have a background in STEAM. So science, technology, and what's the E4? Engineering. They added arts in the past few years, and then mathematics, right? So unless you have a degree in one of those areas, they don't even got to go to law school. Like, I'm so bitter about it, right? They don't even have to go to law school. You could just go ahead and use, you can use an undergraduate degree, study for the test, the patent test, and become a patent attorney. And they be charging bukus of money because it is very rigorous and tedious. They've never seen it happen before in IP, et cetera. I would, if they've never seen it happen, I would honestly, in this process, and it keeps happening, I would maybe seek a consult just from another patent attorney, not to, you know, say that the attorney isn't working, but you just want to get some additional perspective that maybe you can take back to your attorney and have them approach it in a different way. And I'm sorry, that's unfortunate that that is happening to you. Especially with patents. Patents, you guys, though they are so expensive and it's such a very rigorous process. All right, so rescheduling and cancellation clauses. This is important because we want to make sure when life happens in lives and you can't make meetings and appointments, that's okay. But I have to run a business and I need notice of this, right? We've set aside time to be available for this appointment. So if there's a cancellation fee because I can't rebook anyone or I can't provide my service anymore, when you don't show up 15 minutes before our meeting and you send me a notice, let that be known. What's the cancellation period? If it's before 24 hours or within 24 hours, right? People who do a great job of this, I travel a lot, you guys, are airlines. They are very clear in saying, hotels even too, that you will have a cancellation time frame within 24 hours before your reservation starts, free of charge. After that, you are getting charged one night stay with taxes and fees, right? So this is important to detail this out. Also the same with rescheduling, right? You might have a cutoff period for that because ultimately it has the same effect, but also we want to limit this. You can come back and reschedule 6 months later for something you booked a month, 6 months ahead of time, right? My business has changed, my schedule has changed, and it is non-refundable, right? Sometimes when people schedule consults or things like that, you want to disclose that it is non-refundable because I am holding my time to be here for this meeting. I made myself available and unfortunately you couldn't make it, so on and so forth. But grace only goes so far, right? You can reschedule within a certain time frame, you can cancel within a certain time frame, but I want to detail what that looks like and what that's going to be out, okay? A force majeure clause. So force majeure is so important, especially on the back end side of a pandemic, because no one foresaw or knew that we were having a pandemic, right? No one knew that businesses were going to be shut down for almost a year or longer, right? And so that had a major impact in the business. My business was booming during the pandemic. I did not foresee that. I wasn't expecting it. I was kind of sad because I was like, oh, it's off work. No, people are like, how do I enforce my contract? People are trying to get it. How do I get out of my contract? I dealt a lot with this during the pandemic because force majeure clauses say that any unforeseeable act of God or otherwise that neither party could foresee, neither party can control, right? I'm not responsible for this active event, that both parties are to be restored as if the contract never happened. That is an appropriate force majeure clause. I've seen some and I do not agree with them because it literally destroys what the point of a force majeure clause will be. So make sure when in writing your force majeure, I highly recommend that you are fair with that because that is the purpose of a force majeure. Courts will probably not enforce it if it is slighted to one or the other part of the party unjustifiably, right? So if you had to spend a lot of money in guaranteeing and preparing for it when the force majeure event happened, that might be justifiable, that is subtracted from the contract because that makes you whole, right? Or vice versa, that you guys split the cost of that, something. But it is unreasonable for one party to say in a force majeure event that they get a choice and a timing of how the rest of the contract will be enforced. I don't see many courts enforcing that, right? So you can put whatever you want to put in your contract, really. But what it boils down to is is it going to be enforceable? Is the court going to allow this or not? And with a force majeure clause, it's not fair to either party for another party to try to get over on another party, right? So from a enforcement perspective, I highly doubt that those clauses will be enforced. So just a good suggestion, do what you will with your contract now, but that is one that I highly recommend. I know on the last page, we talked about having a confidentiality non-disclosure agreement. You can also have confidentiality and non-disclosure clauses within separate agreements, right? So for a service agreement per se, you aren't my employee, you are not a contractor, you're my client. However, there's some systems and processes that I might go over with you in detail out to you that show you how my business works that I don't want you sharing with other people. And so I want to have them sign an NDA clause there because that's going to help protect my business in the scope of that, right? Any questions around the clauses that we have in here? All right. I promised you guys to touch on government contracts and how this applies. So I'm gonna go through some clauses really quickly as a mimic of these that were applied to the FAR, right? So if you are government contracting, all government contracts are governed by the FAR, which is the Federal Acquisition Regulation. It's the primary regulation used by all executive agencies, and it's not lean per se, but a lean, mean fighting machine, as they would say. It is a lot of information, you guys. Very, very, very detailed. It talks about any and everything that can happen and come up with government contracting. Specifically, a couple of the clauses I wanted to highlight out to you guys are these, because they are in every government contract that you are going to be signing off with, should you get one. One is a changes clause, right? So if for any reason you need to make a change to the contract or the contracting agent needs to make one, this clause governs how those changes are to be made. The government also can terminate for convenience, right? This is if the prices increase, if the work becomes out of scope for whatever reason. It's a variety of different reasons. Also, they might generously use termination for convenience if the requirements of fulfilling the contract aren't met, right? If your contracting agent is very nice and they're like, you are not performing, but we're not going to mess up your history with us or with other agencies and being able to get additional contracts, they might take the L and generously offer you a termination for convenience clause. It's not necessarily a bad thing. They can put some additional reasoning into it, but this is a convenience tool that the government has for being able to terminate agreements if needed for different business reasons or different things like that. And lastly, there's a default clause. So default is bad. We don't want a default clause. This is when a party is not performing. They have defaulted on their responsibilities to fulfill the contract, and the government can act to end the contract for the breach because the other party has defaulted on it. So I know we went through that one really quickly, but these are just 3 clauses I wanted to make sure you guys had in place, and they're in the FAR. I have exactly where they are in the FAR. If you want to know that, just follow up with me. I can provide that for you, but I'm officially done and I want to see, does anybody have any questions for us? All right, so feel free to pop in some more questions. I am, in the meantime, going to turn this back over to Latasha and I'll hop back on if you guys do have questions. You guys are very welcome. Thank you for attending and thank you for having me. Oh, you would like to know where they are in the FAR. Here, I will pop them into the chat. I'm gonna hop off of this and then I'll just put them in the chat so you can know.
All right. Yay. All right, y'all. So, oh my God, first of all, that presentation was phenomenal. All the comments, she got great info, Lauren. Thank you so much. Awesome. Thank you for valuable information. And I'm gonna tell y'all something, okay? I don't know who's on here, but I'm gonna say it anyways. 9 times out of 10, when an attorney presents, it is boring, it is dry, they have no personality, and I never want to listen to the whole training because it's not interesting. They're too strict. And one of the cool things that I love about Lauren is that she has a personality. She's vibrant, and she's not strict. She's like one of us, but an attorney. Okay. And so it's so refreshing to be able to take a training that is so important for us as small businesses and valuable that we can take something away from it. So shame on y'all for not having more questions, okay? Because I don't know what it costs an hour to talk to her, but I can't afford to pay it. And so it's important that when y'all have these type of opportunities, y'all take full advantage. And I know we didn't talk about this, but can you help me out with this? You know, you take full advantage of the opportunities because it's very rare that you get good instructors and the instructors are passionate about your success like you are. But I'm so glad that y'all took time on a Tuesday to hang out with SCORE. We appreciate every registration. We appreciate you guys sharing the information and inviting your friends. We appreciate you showing up because of course we had way more people register, but not everybody shows up for themselves. So you guys should absolutely give yourself a pat on the back. The only person I could not take attendance for was whoever on Zoom have the letter H. I'm not sure who you are. If you can, please comment your name. Everybody else, I think we pretty much got. There's also a way that you guys can check in yourself anytime you take a SCORE training as well. But if you don't, we'll do it on our end, okay? So I want to thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you for the comments. Thank y'all for letting Lauren know she did a phenomenal job. Please feel free to reach out to her. She is not off limits. Felicia Alvarez asks, how do we contact her? Lauren, if you can please drop your contact information inside of the chat. You probably have some potential clients. So other than that, I'm gonna give her a minute to drop it off in the chat. We have a leadership training coming up in a couple of weeks. You guys will get a notification about it via email. So that's why it's important that we can communicate with y'all. But I'm sure it's a room full of leaders in here. So feel free to join us on that. It is an evening training. So it's not during the daytime that you got to block off your schedule. You might be cooking while I'm teaching and I'm actually presenting. And so I'm looking forward to having you guys join us on another SCORE training, okay? Let us know if you need a mentor. We do offer free mentoring here at SCORE. And so please, if you're in our area and you need a mentor, please let us know. If you're not in our area, please reach out to your local SCORE and sign up for your free mentoring. Take as many free classes as you can. Take a couple of the inexpensive, affordable paid classes. And other than that, we hope you guys have a phenomenal